The mug hit his face with a crack so loud, half the diner turned around. Coffee splashed across the counter. He stumbled back, gripping his cheek, stunned. I stood over him, heart pounding, but my hand steady. The waitress gasped. My wife screamed my name like I'd lost my mind. But I hadn't. I'd found it. Right there, in that moment. People started pulling out phones. Some shouted. I didn't care. I looked him dead in the eyes, those same eyes that had been looking at my wife for months while I sat 5 feet away, blind like a fool. He opened his mouth to speak, but I turned and walked out before he could say a word. I'd waited too long for this. 2 years, to be exact. It didn't start with a fight. It started quiet. Subtle. It was a Tuesday. She was in the kitchen making her cinnamon toast like she always did. I sat with my coffee and looked at her back, the same back I'd seen for 50 years. Same robe. Same hair clip. Same slow sway when she walked. And yet, something was off. She flinched when her phone buzzed. Tried to act casual. I noticed because she never cared about her phone before. I told myself it was nothing. But my gut said otherwise. That night, while she was brushing her teeth, I took her phone off the charger. I didn't know the password. But I didn't need it. Notifications lit up the screen. One from Martin. Another, last night was perfect. My hands went cold. Martin had been our family friend since the 90s. Came to every barbecue. Brought wine to our holidays. He'd helped me move a couch just last year. We'd fished together. He held my newborn granddaughter once. I stared at that message until the screen went dark. Then I put the phone back exactly how I found it. I said nothing. I acted normal. I kissed her goodnight. I watched her sleep. And in that silence, I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to outthink them both. And when the moment came, I'd hit them so hard they wouldn't stand back up. The next morning, I started my project. I bought a second phone. A hidden one. I kept it in the glove box of my truck. I started taking photos. Screenshots of messages when she left her phone unattended. Pictures of receipts in her purse. One from a hotel 30 miles away. Another from a dinner spot we never went to. I tagged each one with dates, times, proof. I even placed a voice recorder under the couch. I told her I was fixing the leg. She smiled and thanked me. I almost laughed. Weeks passed. Then months. And still, I said nothing. I watched Martin come over and laugh with me, drink my beer. I nodded along, played the fool, let him get comfortable. Meanwhile, I stored everything on a hard drive, encrypted, backed up, locked in a fireproof box in my garage. The worst part? I loved her. Still did. Even after 50 years. Even after everything. But love doesn't mean weakness. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to wait. And I knew exactly when to strike. Our 50th anniversary was coming up. She wanted a big party, the whole family, even old friends. She talked about gold balloons, catered food, music, speeches. I smiled and said it was a wonderful idea. Inside, I was counting the days. Because that night, surrounded by everyone she loved, I'd show them all who she really was. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the first trap I set. One night, she said she was going to visit her sister. I smiled and said, "Drive safe." She packed a bag. I waited 15 minutes after she left, then grabbed my hidden phone and followed. She didn't go to her sister's. She drove to a hotel on the edge of town. Room 212. I watched from the parking lot. 40 minutes later, Martin showed up. I filmed it all. I could have walked in that night. Could have blown everything up. But I didn't. Not yet. Because when I hit them, it wouldn't be in secret. It would be in front of everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee like I had for the last 50 years. She was humming. Light, casual. Making eggs. She'd always loved breakfast. I watched her closely, not with anger, not yet. Just curiosity. How could she move so easily, so casually, with everything I knew now? She turned and smiled. You want toast? Sure, I said, calm as a lake. Cinnamon, if we've got any. She nodded and went back to the counter. I memorized everything, the way her hand moved, the way she wiped the edge of the plate with her thumb. I wasn't watching my wife anymore. I was watching a suspect. I spent the rest of the day in the garage. That's what I told her. In reality, I was building the digital foundation of my revenge. I had a folder on a hidden drive, one that looked like old tax documents but was encrypted and backed up. Inside it, screenshots of texts, photos of receipts, audio files from the recorder I placed beneath the couch. I labeled everything by date, cross-referenced it with her location history. Yes, I had that too. By month 2, I had more than enough to confront her. But I didn't. Because I wasn't after an apology. I wanted something much bigger. Martin, that bastard, had become even bolder. He'd stop by when I wasn't home. She thought I didn't know, but she always left traces, a wine glass in the sink, perfume in the air that wasn't hers, or the faint sound of laughter on the living room camera I'd hidden inside the mantel clock. I had hours of it. I started printing out select evidence and storing it in a manila envelope. One envelope turned into 3. I labeled them church, work, and family. Each one would go to a different group of people close to Martin and my wife. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to dismantle their lives. But again, not yet. One night, about 5 months in, she left for book club. It was a Thursday. She wore makeup she hadn't worn in years. Even put on heels. I followed her from a distance. Her route didn't go near the library. Instead, she took a turn out toward the hills, where that little cabin lodge stood, the kind that rents by the hour. Real subtle. I parked a few hundred feet away and walked through the woods with night vision on my camera. Watched them through the window. They didn't bother to close the curtains. I filmed enough to make any viewer sick to their stomach. Still, I felt nothing. No jealousy. No heartbreak. Just resolve. On my way back, I left tire tracks in the dirt on purpose. I wanted them to know, eventually, someone had been there. I wanted fear to build. It worked. 2 weeks later, she brought up our anniversary party again. I was thinking, maybe the backyard this time? String lights, a live band? Her eyes sparkled. I smiled. Sounds perfect. She kissed my cheek and walked away. I noted the time, as 7:43 p.m. Everything she said went into the log. Now came the part one had to be very careful with, my family. See, our kids adored their mother. She was warm, kind, always made birthdays special. If I just dumped the truth on them, it would break something too soon. So instead, I started planting doubt. Little comments during phone calls. Your mom's been really busy lately, or she's acting young again, hey? Innocent things. Seeds. I also sent Martin a message from a burner email. Just one line. You should watch your step. Cameras are everywhere. That night, she was tense. Kept checking her phone. Didn't eat much at dinner. I asked her if she was okay. She forced a smile and said she was tired. Good. Let the cracks show. 6 months passed. By then, I'd expanded the operation. I had remote backups, decoy folders, even a printed timeline of events with matching evidence tabs. I could have made a documentary. But the crown jewel came unexpectedly. Martin left a voicemail on her phone. I was walking past the kitchen when it played over Bluetooth speakers she forgot to disconnect. His voice, "I miss you already. That night, you were incredible." He doesn't have a clue, hey? She dove for her phone like it was a grenade. I didn't flinch. She looked at me, waiting for a reaction. I just blinked slowly and sipped my water. "Spam," she muttered, fumbling to turn it off. "Yeah," I said. "Crazy what gets through these days." She stared at me for a second too long. Then walked away. And in that moment, I saw it, fear. The first crack in her act. The performance was slipping. The anniversary was now 2 months away. The guest list was growing. And so was my revenge. 2 weeks before the anniversary, I started pulling the strings. I wasn't going to just expose them. I wanted them to fall apart from the inside before I struck. I wanted him to question her. I wanted her to suspect he was slipping. And I had just the way to do it. One afternoon, while she was out grocery shopping, I printed a message and tucked it into her purse. It was typed, simple, unsigned. "He knows. Be careful what you say. Cameras are everywhere." When she came back, she acted normal. But 20 minutes later, I heard drawers opening in the bedroom, the sound of her dumping out her purse, and a low "oh my God." I stood in the hallway, sipping tea, pretending I didn't hear a thing. That night, she barely touched her dinner. Kept looking at her phone. She went to bed early. The next morning, I found her outside on the patio, phone to her ear, whispering. "I don't know, Martin," she said. "It was in my bag." "What do you mean you didn't write it?" "Then who?" She turned and saw me through the glass. I waved and smiled. She hung up fast. That was the first break. A crack in their unity. I could see it. I moved on to stage 2, a public perception. Martin was well liked. Community man. Always ready to help. But everyone has skeletons. And I had the key to his closet. I compiled a dossier, his flirtations with younger co-workers, emails I'd accessed through a forgotten shared password, even a questionable expense report tied to a city council grant. I didn't make this stuff up, I just collected what everyone ignored. I mailed an anonymous packet to the school board. Another to the local paper. One more to his wife. Yes, he had a wife. Of course he did. The irony was delicious. Meanwhile, at home, things grew quieter. My wife stopped playing music in the kitchen. Her laughter faded. She jumped at every sound. And I? I was calm as ever. I took her out to dinner one evening, her favorite Italian place. She wore her blue dress. The one I'd always loved. We sat by the window. Ordered wine. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Everything okay?" I asked. She blinked, as if surprised I noticed. "Yeah, just tired." I nodded. "Well, the big day's coming up." She paused. "You still want to do it? The party?" "Of course," I said. 50 years, sweetheart. That's no small thing." She looked away. "No. It's not." We ate in silence after that. The next day, I started rehearsing the moment in my head. The speech I would give. The way I'd cue the projector. The expression I wanted to see on her face. On his. I imagined the silence in the yard as everyone realized what I was showing them. I imagined the gasp from her sister. The horror in my daughter's eyes. Not directed at me. At her. 1 week to go. I made sure the footage was edited, clean, undeniable. No guessing, no doubt. Just the truth. I added subtitles to the audio clips, highlighted dates on the screenshots, synchronized the timeline. I wanted every person in that yard to know exactly what they were watching. That same week, Martin called our landline. He never called the house before. She was out. I answered. Silence on the other end. Martin, I said calmly. You called the wrong number. He hesitated. Is she there? No. But I'm here. And you should be very careful what you say next. He tried to sound casual. Look, I don't know what you think you know. I don't think, I interrupted. I know. And soon, everyone else will too. I hung up. That night, she came into the room, pale. Did anyone call the house? I shook my head. Telemarketer, I think. She didn't ask again. The fear was growing. The trust between them was dissolving. They were unraveling, just like I wanted. 2 days before the party, I received a text from an unknown number. Please don't do this. Let's talk. One-on-one. I didn't reply. That same evening, she came into the living room with 2 glasses of wine. Let's sit, she said. We hadn't sat and talked like this in months. She stared at me. Do you think people change? After a long time? I sipped. I think people reveal themselves. Eventually. She looked down. I made a mistake. A few, actually. I haven't been honest. With myself, with you. I waited. I wanted her to keep talking. She glanced at me, eyes red. Do you hate me? I looked at her for a long time. No. I don't hate you. She looked hopeful. I just don't trust you. And that's worse. She didn't answer. Just nodded slowly, and sipped her wine like it was the only thing keeping her steady. The night before the party, I stood in the backyard and watched the lights go up. String lights across the patio. Tables with golden cloths. The speakers were already installed. The projector in place. The USB drive, loaded and ready, taped under the deck where no one would find it until I triggered it with my phone. It was all set. The guests would arrive at 5. And by 6, everything would change. The morning of the anniversary was quiet. Too quiet. I woke up before her. Sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the sunrise bleeding through the blinds. 50 years. Half a century of shared mornings, birthdays, arguments, grandchildren. And yet that morning, all I felt was stillness. Like the world was holding its breath. She stirred beside me. You're up early, she said, her voice soft. Couldn't sleep, I replied. She sat up, brushing her hair back. She looked older than usual. Not in a fragile way, just tired. The kind of tired that lives in your bones. We didn't speak much during breakfast. She kept glancing at her phone, typing out messages quickly, nervously. Probably to Martin. Probably begging him to stay away. Too late for that. By noon, the backyard was transforming. White tents were going up. The catering van arrived. Tables were dressed in gold and cream linens. Flowers, sunflowers, her favorite, were being arranged in tall glass vases. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Our daughter arrived first, with her husband and 2 kids. She hugged us both tight, smiling. 50 years. Can you believe it? She said. I chuckled. Time flies. My wife forced a smile. Her eyes were darting, scanning the yard like she was waiting for someone to pop out of the bushes with a knife. One by one, the guests arrived. Old friends. Neighbors. Her church group. My bowling buddies. Even our former mailman, who'd always brought us Christmas cards. There were nearly 60 people by 4 o'clock. I made the rounds. Handshakes. Laughs. Toasts with lemonade. Everyone thought they were at a celebration. No one realized they were walking into a storm. At 5:15, Martin arrived. He came alone. Wore a dark suit, hair neatly combed, like he was trying to look as harmless as possible. But I saw it, the twitch in his jaw, the sweat behind his ears. He was scared. Good. I walked up to him and extended my hand. He took it, hesitantly. Happy anniversary, he said, voice low. Glad you made it, I replied. Wouldn't be the same without you. He flinched just slightly. I smiled. My wife noticed him from across the yard. Her face drained of color. She walked over, trying to play it cool, but her hands were shaking. What's he doing here? She hissed at me when we were alone near the drink table. He's a family friend, I said, calmly. You invited him to every event for 30 years. Why stop now? She looked like she might faint. I handed her a glass of water. Relax, I added. Everything's under control. And it was. I had triple-checked the projector. The files. The speakers. Everything synced. At 5:50 p.m., I'd press a button on my phone. The deck would unlock the drive. The video would start playing. And no one could stop it. At 5:30, my grandson ran up to me. Grandpa, are you giving a speech? He asked. I smiled. Oh, I've got something planned, all right. He laughed and ran back toward the dessert table. My wife disappeared inside for a while. When she came back out, her eyes were red. She'd been crying. No one else seemed to notice. But I did. At 5:55, I stood near the microphone stand. The yard was full now, clinking glasses, quiet jazz playing over the speakers, plates of pasta and shrimp being passed around. Everyone happy. Everyone unsuspecting. I cleared my throat. Excuse me, everyone. May I have your attention? Conversations died down. Faces turned toward me. My wife stood near the back, under the tent. Martin sat at a table near the center, fidgeting with his napkin. First, I said, thank you all for coming. 50 years is a long time to be married. A lot of history, right? Laughter. Nods. But today isn't just about celebration. It's also about truth. And that's what I want to share. My wife took a step forward. What are you doing? She asked, voice barely audible. I held up my phone and pressed the screen. The music stopped. The projector flickered to life. And the first photo appeared, Echo and Martin, holding hands outside the motel. Gasps. Then the video started. Audio clips. Laughter. Kisses. His voice. Her voice. Timestamps. Dates. The crowd was silent. No one moved. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. She covered her mouth. Stumbled backward. Martin stood up suddenly, knocking over his chair. My daughter cried out, "Mom?" The screen kept playing. Text messages. Voicemails. A photo of the receipt from the hotel, dated during our trip to visit our granddaughter. My bowling buddy muttered, "Jesus Christ." Someone dropped a glass. I turned off the projector. The yard was dead silent. My voice cut through it like a blade. I knew for 2 years. I gave her every chance. Every moment to come clean. She didn't. So I waited. And today, I've taken back my dignity. I looked at her. She couldn't meet my eyes. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. The papers are ready. She fell into a chair, trembling. Martin was already walking toward the gate, head down, trying to get out without speaking to anyone. Didn't work. 2 people blocked him. Asked questions. Then came shouting. 1 man pushed him. Someone else spit at his shoes. He ran. I turned to my guests. Dinner's still warm. Please enjoy. And thank you for being here. Then I walked inside the house, closed the door behind me, and sat down. For the first time in years, I felt light. Like I could finally breathe again. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was restless. Not because I regretted what I'd done. I just didn't need to. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence in the house. It was the kind of silence that presses down on you, the silence that comes after a storm has blown through and nothing's left standing. She was in the guest room. I heard her crying once, around 2 a.m., muffled sobs into a pillow. But I didn't go to her. I didn't say a word. She'd spent years lying to my face. I owed her nothing now. Not even comfort. At 6 a.m., I got up, made coffee, and took my mug out to the porch. The air was cool, sharp with morning dew. The chairs out there hadn't been used in months. I sat, stared out at the yard where everything had fallen apart just hours before. The gold tablecloths were still flapping in the breeze. By 9 a.m., I had already driven to my lawyer's office. He'd been waiting for this call. The divorce papers were signed and dated. We'd set this up weeks ago. Everything was ready. All that was left was delivery. When I got home, she was sitting at the kitchen table in her robe, eyes red, hair messy, a cup of untouched tea in front of her. "You really did it," she said, barely above a whisper. "Yes," I answered. She didn't argue. Didn't beg. Maybe she finally realized I wasn't bluffing. "Was it always the plan?" she asked. I looked at her. "Since the day I saw that first message." She nodded slowly. "You could have just left." "I could have. But you didn't just cheat on me. You betrayed 50 years. You brought him into my house. You let him sit at my table. You smiled in my face and laughed at me behind my back." She flinched. "This wasn't revenge," I continued. "This was justice." She didn't say anything else. Just sat there, shrinking into herself. I left the envelope on the table, the divorce papers, already notarized. Her half of the assets, minus the house. She'd agreed to that in a moment of weakness a month ago when I pretended to be planning a will revision. She signed it without reading too closely. Now she understood why. I went to the garage, opened the locked cabinet, and took out the other envelope, the one labeled Martin, final. This one wasn't just for his wife. This one was for the school board, the local newspaper, and a few parents I knew from the community center. The contents? A copy of the affair, of course. But also receipts showing he'd used school funds to book hotel rooms under a fake consulting program. Emails between him and a female student he'd tried to flirt with 5 years ago, never investigated, but saved in a forgotten backup folder. Anonymous complaints, some that had never been followed up on. He thought he was untouchable. I made sure he wasn't. By noon, the packages were in the mail. By 3 p.m., his name was trending on the local Facebook group. By 7 p.m., his wife had thrown his belongings onto the front lawn. Photos, clothes, even his bowling trophies. I watched the video 3 times. I didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. It wasn't about joy. It was about balance. Later that night, my daughter called. "Dad," she said, her voice shaking, I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. She lied to all of us." "I know. I feel sick. She made her choices." Silence. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. That one hit me harder than anything else. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table. She was still in the guest room. I heard nothing now. Not crying, not movement. Just silence again. But this time, it was different. This time, I was at peace. I thought about our history, the years we spent building a life, the vacations, the dinners, the fights, the quiet nights watching TV, the grandchildren playing in the yard. And now, it all ended with one cold, methodical takedown. But I didn't regret it. Because this wasn't an overreaction. This wasn't cruelty. This was what happens when you betray the one person who gave you everything. I got up, walked into the living room, and turned off the porch light. One last ritual. Tomorrow, I'd start packing. I had a small house rented near the coast, quiet, modest, just enough space for me and maybe the dog I'd been thinking of getting. I wasn't running away. I was starting over. And I wasn't looking back. The town was small. News spread like wildfire. By the end of the week, everyone knew. Not just about the affair, that was juicy enough. But about the lies, the money, the secret hotel visits paid with school funds. People weren't just whispering anymore. They were pointing. Calling. Writing letters. Pulling their kids out of Martin's after-school program. His name was poisoned. I didn't need to lift a finger. I had done enough. The evidence had its own legs now. The community was doing the rest. Meanwhile, my wife, no, ex-wife, I had stopped thinking of her as anything else, became a ghost in her own house. She stopped going to the market. Stopped answering calls. Her church friends, once so chatty and warm, now kept their distance. No more invites to potlucks. No more prayer circles. She'd been erased. Quietly. Systematically. I saw her twice that week. Once in the kitchen, standing with a half-eaten sandwich in her hand, staring blankly out the window. Once late at night, sitting in the dark living room, wrapped in a blanket, the TV on mute. Both times, I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. On the 7th day, I packed my truck. I didn't take much. A few clothes, my tools, my books, the photo of my grandson fishing with me last summer. That was enough. The rest, the house, the furniture, the years of shared objects, meant nothing now. She stood by the door as I carried out the last box. "Where will you go?" "I've got a place," I said. "Near the coast." She nodded slowly. Her eyes were sunken, rimmed red. "Can I call you?" "Sometimes?" I looked at her for a long second. "No." That was the last word I ever said to her. I drove away at sunset. The sky was orange and blood red, streaked with clouds like brush strokes. I rolled the window down and let the wind hit my face. Halfway down the highway, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my lawyer, a divorce finalized. All assets cleared. "You free?" I didn't respond. Just smiled to myself and kept driving. The beach house was small, tucked between two larger vacation rentals. It had a porch, a hammock, and the smell of salt in the air. I slept with the windows open that night, listening to the ocean. It wasn't silence. But it was peace. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. "I'm sorry. I lost everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say it." No name. No signature. But I knew it was from her. I folded it back, placed it in a drawer, and never read it again. 3 days after that, I got another message, this time from Martin's wife. It was short. "Thank you. I don't know how you did it. But you saved me from wasting another 10 years. If you ever want to talk, I'd listen." I didn't answer that either. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I just didn't need anything from them anymore. Instead, I filled my days with quiet things. I fixed the porch swing. Painted the bedroom. Cooked meals for myself, real meals, not microwave junk. I started walking every morning at sunrise. The ocean was always different. Some mornings, calm and flat like glass. Others, wild and loud, crashing like thunder. I liked both. They reminded me that nature never pretends. It just is. One morning, I stopped by a small cafe on the pier. The waitress was about my age, maybe a little younger. She wore her hair in a bun and had a soft laugh. She brought me coffee and asked if I wanted pie. "I don't usually eat dessert before noon," I said. She grinned. "Then you've been living wrong." I ordered the pie. We talked for a bit. Nothing deep. Weather. Fishing. Local news. But it was the first conversation I'd had in weeks that didn't carry weight. As I left, she handed me the check with a wink. "Come back tomorrow. I'll have a fresh one waiting." I did. And the day after that. I wasn't falling in love. That wasn't the point. The point was, I was living again. Free from betrayal. Free from lies. Free from pretending. And for the first time in 50 years, everything in my life belonged to me and me alone. It was late afternoon when I saw the car pull up. I was sitting on the porch, polishing an old fishing reel, the ocean breeze curling around the edges of the house like a lazy whisper. I didn't recognize the vehicle at first, silver, new, something suburban. Then the door opened, and I saw her step out. She wore sunglasses, but I didn't need to see her eyes to know she hadn't slept much. She stood by the gate, not moving. Waiting for something, an invitation, maybe. I didn't give her one. She opened the gate anyway. Walked slowly. Each step hesitant, like the ground might give out beneath her. She stopped a few feet from the porch. "Can I sit?" she asked. I kept polishing the reel for a moment longer, then nodded toward the empty chair. She lowered herself into it without a sound. For a while, we just sat there. The waves rolled in, steady and distant. A gull called overhead. Finally, she spoke. "I came to say I'm sorry." Properly. I didn't look at her. Just nodded once. "I know it's too late. I'm not expecting anything. I couldn't carry it anymore." Still, I said nothing. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, hands clasped. "You were a better man than I ever deserved. You gave me everything. Stability. Kindness. A life. I broke it. And I knew I was breaking it, even while I did it. I didn't think you'd ever really find out. Now I looked at her. That's the part that haunts me the most, I said quietly. Not the cheating. Not the lying. But the fact that you thought I was too blind or too soft to see the truth. She winced. I never thought you were weak, she said. I just thought you loved me too much to leave. And you were right, I said. For a long time. But love isn't blindness. And it's not stupidity. She nodded. I understand that now. We sat in silence again. A boat drifted across the horizon. The tide was coming in. I'm not here to ask you to come back, she said. I wouldn't do that. I'm not even sure I could fix anything if you did. I just wanted you to know I see it now. All of it. What I did. Who I became. And how far I fell. I nodded slowly. I hope you hold on to that. She wiped her eyes quickly, trying not to make a scene. I've started therapy. I'm trying to understand why I sabotaged the only good thing in my life. Good, I said. Start there. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she whispered. Then don't ask for it, I replied. Earn it somewhere else. With someone else. She looked down. Then, after a long pause, she stood. I'll go now, she said. I didn't stop her. Just watched as she walked back to her car and drove away. I didn't feel anger. Not even relief. Just closure. The next day, someone else showed up. Martin. I saw him from the kitchen window, standing on the edge of my property, looking lost. He didn't approach the gate. Just stood there for a while. I walked out, stood on the porch with my arms crossed. He lifted a hand slightly, like he wasn't sure if he should wave or just surrender. I don't know what to say, he called out. Then don't say anything, I replied. He took a step forward. Stop right there, I warned. You take one more step and I call the cops. He froze. I just wanted to apologize. You already did. With every lie. With every beer you drank in my house. With every fake smile you gave me over ribs and backyard stories. You've said enough. His face fell. I lost everything. So did I. Difference is, I rebuilt. You didn't. He nodded, defeated. I deserved that. You deserve worse, I said. But I'm done. I'm not here to punish you anymore. I'm not here for vengeance. I've moved on. You should do the same. He looked like he wanted to say more, but thought better of it. He turned and walked back to his car. This time, I didn't watch him leave. I just went back inside and poured myself a cup of coffee. Later that evening, I sat by the fire pit, the ocean dark and endless in the distance. A gentle wind stirred the coals. I thought about the visits, hers and his, and realized they didn't matter anymore. Their regret was theirs to carry. I wasn't going to hold any of it for them. That night, I slept with the windows open again. And dreamed of nothing. 3 weeks passed. The sun had settled into a rhythm out here, rising early, lingering long over the water, painting every evening in gold and blue. I began to understand the tides, not just in the ocean, but in myself. There were days when I woke up heavy, haunted by flashes of the life I used to live. And then there were days when I opened my eyes and felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. That morning, I made pancakes from scratch. Used real butter, fresh berries from the little farmer's stand down the road. I sat at the table with the window open and ate slowly, watching the gulls dance over the surf. There was no rush. No one waiting. Just me, and the silence that had stopped being lonely. After breakfast, I went for my usual walk down the beach. The sand was warm, and I let it work between my toes. Out on the rocks near the jetty, I saw the same old man with the yellow hat, casting into the surf. We nodded at each other, the way men do when they've seen each other enough times to not be strangers, but not quite friends. Back at the house, I worked on a bookshelf. Real wood. Hand sanded. I'd never made one before, but it was coming together nicely. My hands remembered how to build. My mind remembered how to focus. The doorbell rang in the afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I saw her again, the waitress from the cafe. Laura. She held a covered dish and smiled shyly. I had too much leftover stew, she said. Figured you could use a hot meal that didn't come from a microwave. I smiled. That's kind of you. You've been coming in for 2 weeks now. Figured I'd return the favor. I stepped aside. Come on in. We ate on the porch. She talked about her kids, both grown, one in the Navy, the other teaching art in Oregon. She'd been a widow for 10 years. Said the silence nearly ate her alive in the beginning. Said now, she didn't fear it. She wore it like armor. We didn't talk about what I'd been through. She didn't ask. Maybe she already knew. Small towns have long shadows. Or maybe she just understood that some silences aren't meant to be filled. When she left, she placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "You look better than the first time you walked into that cafe." Like something came back into your eyes. I didn't know what to say. So I just nodded. That night, I sat outside under the stars. No fire, just the breeze and the waves and the creaking of the old hammock. I thought about how fast things had fallen apart, and how slowly they were coming back together. This life wasn't planned. It wasn't what I'd imagined when I thought of retirement. I'd pictured road trips with my wife, movie nights with grandkids, quiet dinners, and old songs playing from a record player. Instead, I got betrayal, fire, and exile. But maybe exile was exactly what I needed. Not as punishment. As rebirth. The next morning, I found a note on my door. Laura again. Going to the Saturday market. If you want company, meet me by the fountain at 10. I read it twice. And smiled. At exactly 10, I was there. She was holding a coffee in each hand and waved when she saw me. We walked through rows of stalls. Local honey, wooden carvings, hand-woven baskets. She picked up a jar of jam and handed it to me. "Try this," she said. I did. It tasted like summer afternoons. We didn't hold hands. We didn't flirt. But we walked close, like two people who had earned their space in the world through pain and endurance. Later, we sat on a bench overlooking the sea. She looked at me and asked, "Do you miss her?" It was the first time anyone had asked me that. I didn't answer right away. "I miss who she used to be," I finally said. Or maybe who I thought she was. But no. I don't miss her now. Laura nodded. That's honest. I've had enough lies to last a lifetime. She smiled gently. Then maybe it's time you had something real. And we sat like that until the sun started its slow descent into the horizon. When I returned home, the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt open. Full of air and possibility. I poured a glass of water, sat at the kitchen table, and looked at the bookshelf I'd built. It stood straight and clean, ready to be filled. I took a notebook, opened to a fresh page, and wrote one sentence. I am still here. And for the first time in decades, that was enough. The letter came on a Thursday. Plain envelope. No return address. But the handwriting was hers. I recognized it immediately, the same curves and angles that had once written love notes on napkins and birthday cards for the kids. I sat on the porch for a while before opening it. Let the ocean wind rustle the flap. Part of me didn't want to know what was inside. I didn't need any more pieces of her falling into my new life. But I opened it anyway. There were 4 pages. No greeting. No date. Just her voice on paper. She wrote about the silence in the house. How it felt louder than any argument they ever had. How each room whispered back at her when she walked through it. She wrote about her friends turning cold. About the pastor asking her not to come back for a while. About running into our daughter at the store, and how she walked past her like she was a stranger. She didn't blame anyone. That was the most honest thing she'd said in years. She wrote about nights on the couch, looking at old photos. About how the wedding picture on the mantel mocked her now, her young face smiling at a man she'd buried in lies. She wrote about the weight of guilt. How it sat on her chest when she tried to sleep, and in her throat when she tried to speak. She ended with one line. You were the only man I ever truly loved. And I destroyed you. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer with the first one. Not out of sentiment. Just order. That evening, I took a long walk down the shore. The tide was high, washing away footprints almost as soon as I made them. I liked that, the idea that nothing had to stay. That you could step somewhere, leave a mark, and the world would gently erase it without drama. Back at the house, I made a fire. Lit candles even though I didn't need them. The soft glow made the walls feel alive. I took out the notebook I'd started and turned to a blank page. I wrote. She's gone. But not in the way she thinks. Because she hadn't died. She hadn't disappeared. She was still in that house. Still breathing. Still trying to piece herself together. But the version of her that had lived in my memory, that woman was dead. And I had buried her quietly, without ceremony, in the space between my last word to her and the moment I walked away. That same weekend, Laura invited me to a community dinner at the PA. Just folding tables, seafood, laughter, and a guitar player singing old rock songs. I went. Wore a clean shirt. Brought a pie. People smiled at me. Shook my hand. Some knew pieces of my story. Most didn't. It didn't matter. I wasn't the man whose wife cheated anymore. I was just the man in the blue flannel shirt who helped fix a neighbor's fence and bought jam from the old woman on the corner. Laura sat beside me, laughing easily. She touched my arm when she told a story about a seagull stealing her sandwich. I didn't pull away. At one point, she asked, "You okay?" And I said, without thinking, "Yeah. I think I am." The words surprised me. Not because they were untrue. But because they were finally true. After dinner, we walked back slowly. The stars were out. The wind had that clean salt bite that told you autumn was near. "I'm not rushing anything," Laura said as we reached my gate. "But if you ever want company for a morning walk or a quiet evening, I'd show up." I looked at her. She wasn't offering rescue. She was offering presence. I nodded. "I'd like that." She smiled, gave my hand a soft squeeze, and walked away. That night, I didn't light a fire. I didn't need warmth from flames. I had it elsewhere now. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just enough. And that, I thought as I drifted off to sleep, was what peace really looked like. The last time I thought about her face, really thought about it, was on a Thursday morning. I was standing in the garden behind the house, trimming the rosemary bush that had started creeping over the path. The sun was warm, the kind that settles into your bones without burning. I paused, wiped the sweat from my forehead, and just stood there. That's when I realized I hadn't pictured her in days. Not her face, not her voice, not the way she laughed or lied or touched my hand at family dinners. Not even the way she cried the last time we spoke. It was like she'd slowly dissolved out of the frame of my mind, until all that was left was a shape I didn't care to fill anymore. That was the moment I knew I was free. Not legally. Not logistically. But in the only way that ever really matters, in the soul. A week later, I got a call from my grandson. He wanted to visit. Just him, no parents, no chaos. "I miss you, Grandpa," he said. "Can I come stay for the weekend?" Of course I said yes. When he arrived, he jumped out of the car with a backpack and a bag of marshmallows. "We are making a fire, right? Only if you promise not to burn my whole house down," I told him. We laughed. And for the next 2 days, the house echoed with a sound I hadn't heard in years, a joy. We walked on the beach, built a sandcastle that barely survived the first wave, roasted marshmallows under the stars, and talked about space and sharks and video games I'd never understand. He asked me, "Do you ever get lonely?" I thought about it. "No," I said. "I think I used to be lonely when I was around people who didn't really see me. Now I'm just alone. And that's not the same thing." He nodded, like he understood. And maybe he did. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. On Sunday night, after he left, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and stared at the ocean. The stars were brighter than usual. The air was clean and sharp. I felt something inside me settle. Not collapse. Settle. Like a stone finally finding the bottom of the river. I looked at the house, my house, and realized it had changed too. Not just from the pictures I'd taken down or the furniture I'd rearranged. It felt honest now. Like it didn't have to pretend to be a happy place. It just was what it was, a real, quiet, strong. That's when I decided to do it. The next morning, I woke up early, shaved, put on a clean shirt, and walked down to the cafe. Laura was already there, wiping down the counter. She smiled when she saw me. "You're up early." "Big day," I said. "Oh yeah? What's the occasion?" "I'm taking a woman out to breakfast." She laughed. "Lucky woman." I pulled out a chair for her. "Hope so." We sat at a corner table. I ordered eggs and toast. She had pancakes with bananas. We talked about the tide, about the new neighbors down the road, about the best fishing spots this time of year. No drama. No big confessions. Just two people sharing a table and a morning. After we ate, we walked slowly back toward my house. The air smelled like salt and jasmine. The road was quiet. As we reached the gate, she stopped. "You seem lighter lately," she said. "I am." She touched my arm. "I'm glad." I opened the gate and looked back at her. "You want to come in for coffee?" She hesitated for half a second. Then nodded. "Yeah. I'd like that." We didn't rush anything. We didn't define anything. But in that moment, I realized something. My life wasn't a tragedy. It was a story. One with pain, yes. But also with survival. And growth. And now, maybe even something close to happiness. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I simply endured. And in the end, I found something most people never do. A way back to myself.